Now, if you think about how Asia has dealt with this problem, this dialectic between progress and legitimacy, clearly it hasn't found any synthesis. Now, if you just look at the sheer volume of data collected in Mahbubani's book, yes, India's rise, China's rise, and so on, is awesome, including Southeast Asia, the amount of people lifted out of poverty. But have the leaderships in these countries actually paid attention to how they are going to structure the future world order? I think there they fall short a great deal. Now, I like chapter 4 of Mahbubani's book because it introduces this lengthy documentation of what non-Western editorials identify to be the specs in the Western eye. But what is left unsaid in much of the book is how the new Asian hemisphere will provide the intellectual apparatus for erecting world order. In this regard, Mahbubani ironically provides a service for the West by both envying and decrying Western legacies in political thought. And I agree with Mahbubani when he says that every great civilization is often associated with flourishing centers of learning. Now, he's paid a nice tribute to the West here for, I quote, protecting old knowledge and developing new frontiers of learning for all mankind. Furthermore, Asia should thank America when its modernization is complete because the US has done more than any other society to train and educate Western elites. Since World War II, several 100,000 Asians have studied in American universities and returned home. Now, I ask whether there is sufficiently qualitative intellectual indigenization when these elites return home. Do they seclude themselves, as this elite that has got nothing to do with lifting the impoverished millions, the ordinary Asians, out of their poverty? Again, if you look at, the varying experiences in governance across Asia, clearly this is still uneven. But again, if you look at the entire variety of Western thought, social, political, economic, and so on, there are shades, And what I admire about Western political thought, drawing upon my own personal experience, is that they have actually looked at hybrid concepts, shades in between. And in international relations theory, even have hybrid concepts like international society. Now, if you look at international society, just as a quick example, where it is envisioned that while the world still falls short of the idea of a supra-sovereign world government, states admit that there is an absolute minimum of common goals of survival which they would wish to achieve despite lingering animosities. Now, if you think of this concept in the abstract, how original would be things like the six-party talks or even ASEAN's Treaty of Amity and Cooperation? They could have been copied word for word out of, say, the Treaty of Westphalia or any other international document crafted in The Hague or in New York. Perhaps what might be original in some of these Asian diplomatic processes would be the degree of implementation of the nuances of respecting diplomatic face of the various parties involved and so on. Now, why isn't that being intellectualized when we talk about the future of Asia's rise and so on and so forth? What does China mean when its heads of government refer to the need for a stable external environment for domestic modernization? The same questions ought to be asked of Indian power. Now, if you look at the trajectory of Western diplomatic history during and after World War II, the institutions that are with us today, the WTO, World Bank, IMF, the UN. Now, there is a rich story here, and I've given a footnote to one book which tries to document it all, where it's not just the politicians that have come up with these ideas. It's famous economists, Anyone who has done economics, macroeconomics would have encountered people like John Maynard Keynes, Harry Dexter White. And of course, one of the classic books on realism, Hans Morgenthau, actually wrote that book not because he was an evil genius or he wanted to be Machiavellian, but he was commissioned to write, to think through what the future of world order is going to be, and hence he came up with that particular vision. And similarly with Thatcher and Reagan, again, I won't say that they are intellectual giants on their own, but nevertheless, they tapped into this stream of conservative economics to legitimize their view of world order. I believe that Mahbubani's earlier book, Can Asians Think?, is more pertinently provocative for the future of Chinese and Indian power than the present one. I don't think for a moment that China and India are intellectual inferiors to the West. They simply need to transcend the temptations of navel-gazing political analysis and excessive criticism of the Western heritage of thought. Sure, the West had blundered in many of its policies towards the Middle East and Asia over the past 50 years, but this does not diminish all of its intellectual attractions. Fledgling Asian leaderships would do well to reflect on this. Now, finally, I'd like to draw attention to this notion of empire. Now, empire should not be understood in this 21st century as straightforward, direct political and military control. It is more in terms of understanding this imperium. Okay, go back to this Latin usage of empire, where you produce ideas that support your world order. Yes, they may contradict one another, but that is in the nature, okay, if you call democracy a Western gift, of democracy. Now, the target of Mahbub Bani's New Asian Hemisphere is probably those elites who have used particular visions from entire corpus of Western political thought to impose things on the rest of the world. But I wouldn't go so far as to say, all Western thought needs to be tarred with the same brush. Sure, if you are against the Bush administration, the current Bush administration, you can say that it's despicable for having ignored the softer strains of liberalism and so on. But surely that isn't a bar to understanding the richness of the diversity of Western political thought. Likewise, when you think about Asia, broadly speaking, as an intellectual heavyweight, where is that weight? Okay? Perhaps Asia should look back to the past, and I have a nice quote here from Confucius, which, if you take it as it is, suggests that Asia might actually have a cosmopolitan philosophy for intervention. Let me just quote you 2 lines here. To restore families whose line of succession has been broken, and to revive states that have been extinguished, to reduce to order states that are in confusion, and support those which are in peril, to have fixed times for their reception at court and the reception of their envoys, and send them away after liberal treatment, and welcome their coming with small contributions. This is the way to cherish the princes of states. Now, if you think about this, you should also ask, what would Confucius say when he looks at the state of affairs in Myanmar today and in Tibet? Would he say that Asians have themselves committed certain intellectual violations based on their own ethics? Okay, if that's the case, can't Asia stand up and say, look, on certain grounds, we support humanitarian intervention, and so on? Therefore, in closing this reflection, I express the wish that Mahbub Bani would write another book, but one that picks up where a speech made in 2000, okay, it's available on the BBC website, I've given you the address there, left open speculation about the tangible shapes of Indian and Chinese leadership that would draw upon their cultural roots. Thank you.